Beware.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Easthampton Planning Board for December 11th, 2012 to order. The agenda. Is there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Probably one that I noticed that we have an A&R.
Yeah, but we just leave that
I
open.
know.
And, yeah.
I make a motion we accept the agenda as presented.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'll second that.
Thanks.
Nobody
Sorry. I thought somebody seconded.
Jim didn't know what to do.
This is really last meeting, so.
No, Jim's like,
For my ears. All right.
anyway.
Thank you. Minutes from our last meeting, the 27th of November. Are there any corrections or additions? Motion to accept them?
I make a motion we accept the minutes of November 27th, 2012.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
No.
Is there anybody here to speak to anything that's not on the agenda? No? Okay.
Really? Just something.
A&Rs. We have one A&R tonight. Would you like to come up? Sure.
That'll be good. I don't really need one down here. No, I'll just take it from here. That's okay.
Oh, Maple Street.
Oh, good old Maple Street.
The fruit yard is in here.
Not
Yeah.
far from my house.
Hockey down here.
Yeah, hockey down here, yeah. I agree with you.
Okay, what I'm looking for is, we're proposing a building here. Just to give you a little bit of background, this is my home here at 105 Maple. So I own all of this property going back to here, which is number 5. My daughter resides at this home and owns this home. It's a 2-family home, and her property line runs on that south line. What we did basically is, the lot that was there before had a frontage of 83.84. My daughter and I swapped pieces of property. She gave up 16.16 by 20, which is the required setback, 20 feet. So roughly 320 square feet. And then I gave her as a swap this piece here, which is 9 feet by 40.5 feet. So it's basically kind of an even swap,
Yeah.
because she has to be left with 12,500 square feet.
Right.
It's a 2-family house. So down here it gives you the total on the square footage for each of the parcels. So hers is left with the 12,540. Mine is number 5, 14,090, and then the lot that we're proposing here would be the 10,020 square feet. So we would have the 100-foot frontage, and then we have the 10,000 square feet, which are required for single-family homes.
This is an increase of frontage here by taking that.
Yes, the 16.
Yeah, to make it 100.
So that circle is where the 8384 was, is that correct?
Yes.
And the setback on the frontage is only required to be 20 feet?
Yep.
For what? Sorry.
They're adding this 16 feet to make it a total of 100. The setback is only 20 going to there.
That's
Is that correct?
what we have in our, the policy is that this has to go back, at least whatever the front setback is for
Right,
this
that's
zone.
20 feet.
So that's good.
Yeah.
So it meets the definition of the A&R, so it's got the frontage.
It's pretty odd.
It's got enough letters in his name as I do.
Yeah.
It is odd, but as long as they're following everything, we don't
Yeah.
really have much.
You're just endorsing the frontage,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so.
I'd like to endorse the A&R as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
And I put Dick, I'm a roofer with a golf ball.
I was gonna sign some stuff and I have a few questions
Yeah.
for you
Sign
before you go.
Hockey.
Okay.
Hockey.
Just a question I have, do I get a copy?
Oh, yes, you'll get everything you need.
You're gonna
You're gonna take the
You're
Mylar?
gonna sign it, you're gonna take the Mylar, that's what you're gonna
What's that?
record at the registry. You can take a copy for yourself,
Okay.
for your own
And then you
record.
get the rest.
And then we keep the rest. So if you need 2 copies, I could probably give you 2 copies if
All
you
right.
wanted to.
Did you give us a check?
What's your name?
Yes, I have a check.
Robert.
Okay. Robert. You can't go proceed just without a check.
L.A.N.?
W-I-C-C.
Thank you very much.
She was?
And then that's the question.
All right, we're good.
But anyway,
You had a
got
question?
A&R. No, I was just looking at something and it didn't mean
Yeah,
anything.
right now. Nope, right now.
I thought, I
Don't go anywhere.
wind up with something, but we can't.
All right. You get one signed and the Mylar? They're both signed. And
Did you want another, a second copy, just for your own
If I
record?
could, sure.
Yeah. You can get one for our office and the city clerk. And I get one to the assessor.
Every time we had an A&R arrangement, we got a copy to take home. Well, I just keep it for, I used to keep it for a year. That's when
You want another signed one?
How long is it?
I wish I keep all that stuff on. I know I just
Got it.
throw it all out.
I do not.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Otherwise, the rest stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you can see them.
Yes, it's there. Okay, no other new business? Moving right along, go to the proposed rules for planning board. Anybody want to start? I have one question for everybody, if nobody else wants to start, and that's filing deadlines. A&Rs are listed in the proposed language that our assistant city planner submitted in Rule 9 as 3 business days prior. I didn't get a chance to speak to him, but I'm just questioning whether the board wants to go along with that or allow A&Rs the same sort of flexibility that we've been doing, where they're allowed to come in right up to the time the meeting starts.
I like flexibility. I mean, I think that we should keep the rule in there as a guideline. I'm sorry, I would have a disagreement, because if you have a situation where you've got nothing else going on and you can move somebody through, then I think you should move somebody through.
But that's potentially applying 2 different rules to people.
Yeah.
I think if we're going to have rules, we should make rules that...
But the way around that is by motion in the committee. I motion to bypass the rule for this.
Jessica, is there a logic to doing it 3 days prior?
Sure.
Is there?
I mean, you're just, I have to say that I think, in my opinion, it would be nice to have A&Rs listed just to meet open meeting law requirements. I mean, that's the 3 business days has to do with the open meeting law requirements. And I like having the flexibility that somebody can walk in. I mean, we could ask Jack for an opinion regarding A&Rs, because there's no public hearing, there's no public notification, you know, maybe there could be that flexibility with the A&R. But I question if somebody did want to come in, and there have been occasions where we've had A&Rs recently where there has been neighborhood interest in what's happening to that property. and to have proper notification so that people know, rather than me just saying, oh, by the way, this is going to be at the planning board tonight. I mean, you know, I don't think in terms of law there's a violation, but I'd like to, you know, I don't know. It's up to the board. And you can always change this if you need to in the future. It's not set in stone.
If you notice on our agenda, we make a provision for A&R, so if someone is a walk-in, the provision is already there to ask if there are any A&R, so that gives a person, someone to say, yes, I have an A&R.
Wouldn't this bypass that?
I think this would stop, we would take this off.
Take it off.
As an open policy once we adopt it.
That'd be a great idea, because then that would not meet the open meeting law, right? By doing
Right, it's by somebody just being able to walk in and present an A&R. I don't know the ruling, I mean, I'm not an attorney, so, you know, I tend, it's a gray area, because I think there is some open meeting law, but again, it's an endorsement, it's not an approval, it's a totally different, quirky part of our zoning laws, and so I don't know if it needs the same level of scrutiny, but again, I think in all fairness, I think it's better to have it out there and people know, rather than to be in a gray area.
I don't think we're required to provide notice, but I don't think that hurts anybody except somebody who can't make the 3-day window to provide notice the same way we would for anything else.
If someone came in with an A&R and we were uncomfortable with it because it seemed as if perhaps other, you know, for whatever reason, the public should be involved, do we have the ability to say, wait a minute, we want to wait on this?
You have 45 days to look at an A&R. I believe it's 45 days.
But see, that's why if a person comes in with an A&R and we feel that it requires, maybe that person feels it's an A&R, but it might be a special permit, so it has to get kicked out. But the thing is, if someone comes in with an A&R and we have a scheduled another piece of business, that person will have to wait until we finish, because they can't intercede and be first. We would have to finish whatever's coming first, and then they can come in with their A&R. Or does it matter?
I don't think it matters.
Because if we say something is scheduled for, say, 6:15, and that person comes in at 6:15 and says, I have an A&R.
Right.
But the paper says it's scheduled for 6:15. We can't really say...
If you
can bump people back with it. I mean, all the time it'll be 6:15, 6:30, 6:45, and the first thing takes an hour.
I just didn't know if we were...
You just can't move it forward.
I knew that. Yeah.
I didn't know if that would interfere with that, or if we would...
I mean, there are some communities in the valley that just have like this open half hour at the beginning of every meeting, and that's when they deal with all their administrative A&R business. I think it's a little bit...
Yeah.
I want to ask another question about who it's hurting.
Well, wait a minute, we want to get that answered first.
Who don't, if you...
Hello?
Okay, let's put it like this. Does it go on our agenda?
What question hasn't been answered?
I'm fine. I'm good.
Oh, that's all I wanted to know, if she was good with them coming in at that time.
Would you put an A&R on the agenda?
Yes, like
Yes, we have.
And then the only way the public would know about it was that they would have the ability to go and see the agenda in advance.
Right.
But if it's 3 days...
It meets, 3 business days would allow it to go on the agenda.
Because it's going on Thursday.
On Thursday. So
which is when all the agendas...
It's just making it.
It's just making, which I think is fine, you know. Because there's no... The difference with like a special permit is that there's legal notification that takes 2 weeks. And with site plan review as well, we have to send it out to other boards for review. So we'd like to have at least, 2 weeks for that to happen, for that we can get comments. A&R, it's just you, only you, nobody else. It's just an endorsement. But still, I think in all fairness, it would be nice to have them listed on the agenda as a point of business. So if anybody did want to come down and see what is going on, they have the right to do that.
And I'm fine with us doing a 3-day window, and I wanted to bring it up for discussion, but the issue I have is, I think we do one or the other. We don't, in some cases, waive the time frame for some people or some applications, and then in others we say, well, no, you can't do it because you haven't met it. So I think we just need to decide what we want for a standard.
Now that I see the design, I agree with that.
So I mean, if everybody's comfortable with it, we just leave it as is with the 3 business days
Yeah.
and make sure that they're all on the agenda from now on.
Well, and I think part of it, correct me if I'm wrong, Jess, but I think we got a lot of these that would not have come that early, but only because they know that they can bring them in when they want, right? I mean, I think once this is a published rule and people know about it, then you get your A&R on the agenda 3 business days earlier, and I don't think it's that big of a hardship.
And I think it's important to sort of set a standard for all business. Like, for instance, I had somebody walk in today that wanted to be on the agenda tonight. And I said, you can't just walk in here and just,
Right.
come before the board. Unfortunately, I mean, there's standards that we have to meet. And, I'm sorry to have to push you off the month because we're not meeting again this month. But, I think to set a standard so that you just can't walk in at any time, I think is important, and so that people know there is the ability to put it out there. So if anybody has the right to come down here and say their peace of mind on any piece of business before you. That's my 2 cents.
I mean, the thing about the A&R is there's no discretion in theory, and we should have all the information on the plan, so the public comment portion may only be so that somebody can get something off their chest, but I don't have a problem with allowing people to do that. It doesn't, it doesn't impact us, and I think that's fine.
Overall, I agree. I have a little hesitancy, right? Because we don't want to put barriers in front of people.
No, but I think 3 days is
3
not...
days is fair. It's not 3 weeks.
And I think if everybody has the same standard to meet, then we're not causing anybody any undue or disproportional sort of
And it
representation.
gives the public a chance that if they want to come in and hear what an A&R and what's going on with it, it gives them a chance.
And sort of my tough love perspective as well is, I'm willing to accommodate as much as possible, but just because you're coming in and screaming in here the last minute unprepared, it's not necessarily, I shouldn't have to make it my problem that you're not organized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of that's my tough love mom side. But,
It has to be done.
Were there any other issues on these rules that anybody has?
Well, I'm looking at these other filing deadlines, and I see this one for other business that's on here. I guess I don't know what that would entail and why
like
that's...
it's something we're going to talk about later. This is, a performance bond, release of lots.
Okay. And is there a reason why we have that?
No, I didn't.
I think it's so that it meets press time for the agenda.
But isn't that our theory with the A&R as well? So we want them all to be on the agenda? I mean, I don't know which date, what the timeline should be, but it seems like they should both be
I think that 3 business days prior, not just, and take
10
it
a.m.,
on
3
Wednesday.
business days prior.
Yeah,
Well, it's if you don't count Friday as the business day, it would be
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday at 10 a.m.
So you can either say Thursday, or you can say 3 business days.
But
I think 3 business days.
I think 3 business days is good because we're not always going to be meeting on the same calendar day necessarily. I mean, we can move our meetings. Then we don't have to change the rules.
all right, so you want to change this Wednesday to say 3 business days? Everybody in agreement with that?
Yeah. Almost like 6 of one.
I do have a question here. Are you done with the filing deadlines, or are there more?
Yep, go ahead.
The role of the planning board chair, I noticed you said that the chair serves as ex officio for all planning board committees. I would like to just get understanding on that so that, say for instance, in the it's a perfect example, Master Plan Implementation Committee, and you wanted to come, would you be the chair?
No, the chair is allowed to be a member, not
No, the chair is a
chair
member.
of the other
I wanted to
committee.
make sure that was
It's a member.
Understood.
Yeah.
It's not.
Ex officio member. Okay.
Yeah.
That's about attendance then. Okay.
I got a question. What would happen, theoretically, what would happen if I went to one of his meetings? And you were at one of his meetings also?
You have a quorum.
Chen was at one of those meetings.
You have a quorum.
Yeah, you can't be there.
You don't want to all be there at once.
Yeah, but can't you show up at his meeting as a member of the public? Why do you have to be a member of the planning board? I mean, where does the separation come from?
I think you have to publicly state, right, that you're there as a
Well,
member.
if you're not, I think it's a gray area, but I think if you talk to the city attorney, because I ran into this with subcommittees of the city council when I was a counselor, it depends on whether you're actively participating as a member of the committee and representing yourself as a planning board member, or whether or not you're observing a meeting and commenting as a resident of the community.
I think even if you're commenting, if it involves any planning board business and there's any argument that there's any deliberation going on, that you needed to provide notice in advance.
Yeah, I didn't go to them just because I didn't want to get involved.
Right. I mean, and I think that it would be, I mean, I think you could have extensive litigation over whether it was or wasn't, but I think in all these things we are on the side of caution. So if Harry wants to go and he knows that you're going to be there too, I guess
He has to call you and
you all
say
insist on going, then we need to provide notice that there's going to be.
It doesn't happen very often, and I think people who are prudent about it will not put themselves in that position. So it's like I wouldn't show up.
I
Yeah, but
have,
that-
I'm going to be there.
That
I
makes
have one
sense.
thing that happened. It happened recently when 3 members of the planning board were on the highway business, and that was illegal because we were constituted. But I know there was somewhere when I talked to.
There were also ordinance subcommittee members at that meeting.
Yeah,
And that's
true.
why we stopped going to that too, because I called the ethics board and
Right.
their
Well,
advice
that's
was
why
to stop going.
I had talked to the town attorney about that with the ordinance. But the thing is, too, correct me if I'm wrong, he had said, this was the previous town attorney, you can go, but you gotta learn, you can't speak at that. You can't speak towards, like if we went to, he has his meeting, and 2 of us went to it. Basically, where it is now, one of us has to leave, because that would constitute a quorum. But I don't know if
That makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
if no one says me, I don't say anything.
Not at all.
I mean, it has to do with the material that's being discussed, and has to do with whether there's any deliberation or decisions being made. I mean,
Right.
there were what, a handful of us at the community development block grant meeting, you know,
Right.
but we're not there deliberating, we're not dealing with planning board.
But the other
business.
thing too is, we had planning board members on the original, the original. We had almost every member was on the makings of the master plan. So how did we get around that?
You can post it as a meeting of the master plan subcommittee and the planning board if you wanted to all be there. And
It wasn't posted, it was
No,
just
but I'm just
planning.
saying you
Like a
can
joint
do
meeting,
it.
yeah, a joint. I think
So,
that-
I
But you
think
weren't
we're
working
getting off
together, but it was,
off
the
topic.
way that it was set up is there was subcommittees and you were each on different subcommittees. You
Right,
didn't-
right.
you didn't
There
sit
weren't 3
together.
members on that round table.
Right.
I think overall that's covered by the open meeting law and would be outside the bounds of.
So, like the chair just said, could it be announced as the subcommittee in accordance, in joining with the planning board? Would that
You can
allow
have a
us?
joint meeting, and then you'd be.
That would be a joint meeting, right,
Proper
Jessica?
notice.
I'm sorry, what?
If he was to announce that it's the meeting of the committee and planning board,
Well, both would have
Or
to
a
post
joint
agendas
meeting.
and we would go through all the normal
would that be
processes.
okay for 3 members to be there? If it was a joint meeting, just for us to be
Meeting
there?
with who?
Any subject.
With any
3 members.
I'm
subcommittee.
getting lost.
We're getting out of this
Subcommittee.
Chet, the 3 members.
As long as you post,
Yeah,
there's
you-
3
it's all
members.
on-
Well, that's what I was
Then
asking.
you're fine, as long as you
Okay.
post.
So maybe he should post it that way at every meeting, just in case 3 of us show up, or 2 more show up in that respect. That's what I
You're not
think.
sitting on the committee though, and that's the difference between this and the highway business, is you actually were members of the highway business committee. You were
Right.
part of that committee. If you show up because you're an interested party in what the master plan implementation committee is doing, You're not you're not sitting around the table with them, you're in the audience listening to them.
Right, but if there's,
It's a different,
Yeah, but there's still,
What
we're still
happens-
engaged in conversation.
if two of us are sitting out there in the audience.
just call each other and make sure.
I just think if he mentioned it as a joint meeting, then we're all covered. At every meeting, in case we do.
Okay.
What do you think? Yeah.
If you mention this joint meeting, you have to put an agenda, and you have to give it to Barbara. The whole point of this is public notice. What we avoid in making decisions together is that if the public doesn't have a chance to be here and watch it and be a part of it during that public comment phase, it's inappropriate. So if 3 folks are there at the master plan and everyone at the master plan says, we don't understand, please help us, and you look at each other like, I've never dealt with this before, but you know what, it'll be this way. You just made a decision, the public did not have any ability to be involved in that, any notice that a decision was made, and that's wrongdoing. And that's what this whole thing is set up to avoid, am I right? So if we do it joint, as you're suggesting, then you're all coming down to my meetings.
Right.
So it's not gonna happen.
Well, if someone mistakenly, 2 other members not knowing each other are going, and they sit at opposite ends and not even know each other is there.
I don't think our meetings are that big.
Check.
We have this,
Back to ground zero. Our rooms are not this big that we can't see one another.
our new rules do define quorum as 4 members though. Right, I mean.
Yeah, but
are
3
we allowed-
members are a quorum.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Are we allowed to define it as 4 under the rule? I don't know where the source of the 3 members is a quorum rule that we all operate under comes from, but if it's mass general laws or something, then the fact that we make a rule that says 4
You
is...
take the number of people that sit and
That's it,
divide it by
right.
half, and then that half person becomes the next
As a whole,
one.
right.
Right.
So you have 5 divided
Right.
by half.
And then you
2
come
and a
up
half,
with
so
3.
3 is actually a quorum.
Right.
But for special permits, you have to have
4.
4
Right.
to vote. So do we want to define a quorum as 4 or 3?
3. Well, if you say 4, then 2 of us can show up at his meeting, because we'll only be 3 there.
If you, no.
See what I mean?
So we need to change that to 3, correct?
Yes. Like Jessica said, I have to get into the modern world, or thereabouts.
Anything else?
I think isn't life wonderful?
No.
Now,
I'm sorry, you're gonna...
no, I was just wondering like I said, if there are no more questions, where does this go now?
I have one more, it's about the associate member.
Yeah.
Did I miss that?
Oh, I don't see anything in there about associate. Should that be put in there, Jessica? Associate member of some sort?
What their rights are, what the privileges. If you remember the very first meeting that we had,
Yeah.
my involvement, it was
Yeah.
several meetings that were
Yeah,
involved
you
in
just
that.
didn't have the right to vote.
And we can help anyone in the future avoid all that again by setting down
That should
just a
be
few
put in there, that
sentences, if that makes sense.
associate member can add to the discussion, but does not have a right to vote.
Well, that's
Unless one member is absent, and it's, but then that,
The associate member's right to vote for the special permit is defined by state law. and
Right.
That's,
And
but
our decision to allow James to vote on administrative stuff and the
could be memorialized in
could
here.
be put in there,
Right.
yeah. That probably makes sense.
Do we want to put it under the Rule 4 under the meetings, or do we want to put it under a separate
I think it should be a separate
be a
rule.
separate rule. I was always under the impression that the associate could offer opinions but not vote unless one member is out for that vote, and the associate had to be at all the meetings in order to vote.
That's on substantive applications, but on things such as the chairman, vice chairman, and like business practice such as these rules.
administrative?
Right, administrative stuff.
Yeah, okay. I was just trying to get something
Well, if
straightened
this
out.
is the case, and he's running a committee, he's not really a member of the planning board then. So those 2 of us could show up, because he's not a voting member.
He's still a member for quorum purposes.
That's an interesting point.
But that's
But he's not a member of the planning
he's still not a member.
What a mess that
So the
is.
2 of us could show up.
Well, he is a member of the planning board. I mean, he's an associate
That's
member.
right.
Right, he
I'm
wasn't.
not trying to get him off that.
Well, you know,
I'm
what's
just gonna
gonna
say,
happen.
technically, he's not a voting member of the planning board.
Yeah, but what's gonna happen is he's eventually going to become a member because we'll have a member that's just finished his, but he'll have to be put on the agenda on the
They'll have to.
town council,
Yeah,
and they
town
have
council.
to accept his appointment, so it's gonna,
We're gonna add a new rule, is that what everybody has agreed upon? And we're gonna say that the associate member is allowed to vote on any administrative matters.
Yep. And the rest of it's all governed by state law, I mean.
Right.
Wait a minute, I'm going back to this quorum thing for a second.
yeah.
Just because it says the associate member shall be included when making a determination, so
Right.
that's actually 6. So 4 is right.
Yeah,
If that's what, if you're going to include associate members as constituting your quorum, not voting members. If you're just going to go with the voting membership, which is 5 positions, then 3 is your number.
I think we should just leave it that way and not,
Just not to complicate things, but
yeah.
3 is not a quorum if you're going to include
You may
associate
never have an
membership.
associate member like me again anyway.
But, well, even if we do, I just think we should leave it the same way as we've been doing
But
it.
then is it 3 members not counting James?
Right.
Correct.
That's
We
what I'm
have to
saying.
strike the second
If you
sentence.
strike the second sentence, then it's 3 members. If you include, are there 2 associate positions for the planning board?
Yeah.
There
So there
usually
could be
is.
7. So you're saying there could be up to 7. Divide that in half, and you actually have 5 as a quorum.
Yeah, but until that happens.
We're gonna back ourselves into a corner,
I
because some
think
night we're
you
not
are.
gonna be able to get 3 people here, we're gonna be...
I think we
you
should
better-
just
I think you should.
Strike the second
I think you
sentence.
should.
Just leave it at 3.
I think your quorum is on voting members.
It's all right with the way it is.
So we're gonna strike the second sentence.
Yeah.
But still change it to 3.
Correct.
Right, and I'm happy about that part.
So the question is, if only 2 of you can show up, and your associate member can show up,
You don't have quorum.
you don't have a quorum.
Right.
Well,
So you need 3 voting members to have
Or-
a quorum.
but-
Maybe that 3 voting members of the planning board should
well,
constitute a
except the
quorum?
other thing is that
I would say that.
we've already said that James can vote on administrative things, so the 2 of us and James can vote to amend the rules or alter the
Right,
rules
so
for
that
that
he would be
meeting.
a
I mean,
voting member.
If we're allowing him to amend rules and we can do it on site,
That's
it all becomes kind of moot.
Right, then it would be
But
3.
then it goes back to 4, if you're allowing the associate member
So you
to...
have 2 associate member positions. So you
Right,
have to
yeah.
actually include, it's 7. So your quorum is 5, including your associate
I think you
member.
have to strike.
Are there
my-
technically 2 associate members for the planning board?
There are 2
There are 2 vacancies for it. I think
No,
that,
I'm asking a
It's
question.
1.
Is there only 1 or is
I
it
think
2?
there's 1.
It's
Yeah.
just 1?
It might be.
Okay.
I think
so
there's
it's
2 on the
six.
zoning board, but I think there's 1 on the
Yeah.
planning board.
Okay.
I think that the opportunity of having 2 voting members show up at his meeting at the same time it would be, I don't know, 10,001 or what?
But that has, we're talking about quorums for our meetings.
Yeah.
Right, I would talk about leaving it at 3.
So 3 of you and 1 associate member, or just 3 of you.
Just
But
3
not 2
voting
of you and 1
members.
associate member. That won't cut it.
No.
That's
But-
where you're at.
no,
I
But
don't
2
know.
of us and 1 associate member can alter and amend the rules to make it the 2 of us and
So I
1
think we have to
associate
get rid of
member.
that rule. I think you have to reverse
mean,
it.
We have to amend that
You
and
can't.
just take it
If
out.
you want to include the associate member, it's got to be a quorum of 4.
Yeah.
And just
Right.
leave the language in there.
In there.
So you're saying 4.
With the second sentence, yeah.
Say 4.
You're gonna say 4? No, I like the 3
Which
better.
I think makes more sense, because if you have a special permit and say it's 3 of you and an associate member, he can still vote, stepping in under that special permit, correct? And that's your 4 that you need.
As long as he was at
So
all
the
the
numbers jive
meetings.
is sort of what I'm trying to get at.
But doesn't the quorum differ based on whether it's a special permit or a site plan review or an A&R? I mean, isn't the special permit the one where you need the supermajority
You need a
of the members?
supermajority vote in
But
order.
any of the other ones, whatever we define as a quorum, you can just go with that number.
So the
So it's
special.
not, so
the special-
defining one quorum is different for depending on what's in front of us.
Okay, now, if
Right.
you're gonna do that,
For administrative, there's one
And-
form for,
For a site plan review or an A&R, and then there's another one for a special permit, and it's all different.
yeah, but for an associate member to say vote, that associate member cannot miss, on some of these special permits, they
Right,
have
no,
to
I
be
understand.
there.
But none of us can, Chad.
None of us can
Right,
miss.
I know that, but the idea is I still like the 3 as a quorum. I just won't go for 4.
So like for a special permit, we can't, 3 isn't a quorum, we have to have 4.
You can't.
And all 4 have to vote for it.
Oh, and they're voting members, yeah. That's why I'd rather have the 3.
But it doesn't make sense if you can't hold a meeting to hear a special permit when you need 4 votes.
If there's only 3 people there, that's not a quorum by definition.
Pretty typical.
I think that the 4 is sounding more and more reasonable.
Well,
Well, or does it not make sense to define what a quorum is, because it varies depending on what's in front of us? I mean, if there's a site plan review, it's literally different. Somebody can come in late in time for the special permit, and there'll be a quorum for both of them. So I don't know that it makes sense to define it under the rules other than to go through all of the variables and say for administrative things, it's any 3 members for a site plan review.
I see one value in defining it. The only thing I use it for typically in the committees that I've been a part of is if you don't have enough people attending the meeting's canceled.
That's right.
It's like a defining number that tells you we can't do this at all.
Then why
I
can't
know, it's happened before on previous planning boards that all of a sudden, one member, you need 4 and one member happens to be out sick. That meeting was either canceled to the following meeting or a special meeting for the following Tuesday, rather than wait 2 weeks.
But even for that scenario, it would depend on what's on our agenda. So if we had 4 people and one person decided they couldn't make it at the last minute, we couldn't do our special permits, but we could still do the A&Rs and site plan reviews. We could talk about the green standards. We could vote on that. So all those things we could do still.
So why don't we just define it for all 3 scenarios, or 4 scenarios there's 3, administrative matters, A&Rs and site plan reviews, and special permits.
I think that probably covers everything.
I think you're complicating it, but that's
Okay.
But it also does.
I just think that sometimes less is more, and if we know what sort of I don't know.
But the thing is do people that come in new, especially like me, know that's what this guide is for? What if you come in, you don't know, you're at 3, you think, it's okay. One that requires a supermajority comes in, it's 4, and then you get slapped with real trouble. It's good to put it in writing.
But the other thing is it's going to change based on who's actually on the board. So the number today is going to be different than it's going to be next meeting when David's gone. We have a vacancy, the number of the board. It's not the number of spots, it's the number of people. So
No, it's the
I
number
think
of
it's the number of
spots.
spots.
even if they're unfilled,
Yeah.
Yes,
The
that
board
was
collapse.
the issue with the ZBA,
that's
is we
true.
only had 4
and you
people,
want to have enough, yeah.
and they needed a 4 to,
Yeah,
all
but
had
we
to
can
vote
still-
in favor of projects because
Right.
there was nobody to
Right, so
dissent.
for the special permit stuff, we'll need, for the
You
other stuff,
absolutely need 4 people.
but for the other stuff,
You can have
it's just a
3.
majority of, yeah.
Right.
Which means if I'm voted in, we're at 5, we're going to want to hunt for an associate real fast.
So,
Yeah, if
so
you're
here,
voted in.
If.
for all matters other than a special permit, the quorum can be 3.
Right,
And the associate member
can be one of them.
can be one of them. No, can't be for site plan.
No.
Well, that's the 4.
It would, because they're only,
Why can't he vote for the site plan?
Yeah, he can.
Because he'd vote for one of the members that's not here.
yeah. Okay, so special permit's the only special circumstance where you need 4.
Yes.
Everybody agrees with that?
No.
Is there- You need 4, it's the minimum number of votes.
Gotta have
to pass
4
it.
anyway.
Yeah.
You have to
Gotta
have
have
4,
4.
yes.
So if, for everything else, so if the quorum is
What
defined
I'm
as...
saying is, I'm still for the quorum be left at 3. And I know what you're trying to do. If you want to put it together, I would like it to go to the city solicitor and get an opinion from him before I even vote on it.
Pretty sure they just
Just
said they
to
want to
be-
put it at 3, except in the one case where it's already mandated to be 4, right?
Yeah.
We just
Yeah,
said.
that's what we're
So we're
saying.
all in agreement then.
Chet, what is your?
Well,
Chet, what is?
I'll do
what
it
is-
that way.
Chet.
Well, see, I'm always used to, since '83, we always had 3 as a quorum. Well, maybe I'm old school, but that's the way it was. Now,
Did you
it's
have an
being
alternate?
changed, and if it is going to be changed, I'd rather have it go to the city solicitor.
So what's the
If he
question? So
says-
what's the question for Jack? Tell me what is the question so I can ask him. So I just want to be clear.
Well, with
What is,
having,
what is a quorum?
the quorum should be left at 3, and if there isn't and if there's a special permit where you need 4, and that person doesn't show up, then it goes to a next meeting.
Wait a
And
minute.
now you're saying you want to have a 4th person, make it a 4th, right?
No, it's the same, you're saying the same thing. All I would say is that, like, so for any of those items up to the special permit, we have a quorum, because there's 3 of us here. When we get to the special permit, there's no quorum, this gets bumped.
Okay, then
I mean, it's all the same
I must have
stuff.
misunderstood in that.
It's just because the special permit requires the quorum.
Okay.
So for everything other, do you agree with that? Everything other than the special permit? So we just break it down and we just have one?
So I don't have to ask Jack anything?
No.
No.
Okay, all right, I just,
Maybe you would want to approve it.
All right,
but
do you want to put this together and we'll vote on it next time?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
Get it all in
Sorry,
writing.
Ron.
I thought we were going to be able to check something off the list for the end of the year, but I guess not.
Just vote on it next time.
We'll vote on for the beginning of the year, of the new
Yeah, we'll
year.
give us something to do.
Friday the 13th?
No. Okay, are there any other items that we need to talk about on here? So that next meeting will be
Should I save it for the
done with
next
this.
meeting?
No, please don't.
No.
Let's get everything out
I
together.
don't have anything else.
I have just some formatting things, like can you do a page break before Rule 5 so that header stands up on the top of the page? Mine, maybe yours did, but mine didn't.
Yeah. Rule 2 also has a period that should be a comma.
Oh, yeah.
And then under the Rule 12, if you could just underline the A&R, the special permit, and the site plan approval, just so they kind of stick out a little bit.
Okay, you guys are going too fast.
Yeah, so that way, and that way I'll see it.
The landslide rumor. Okay,
Well, there's not much more for him to do.
do you want
And then
to
you're
read those again?
You're gonna put it so
Well, if we
Just
don't
say-
put them here, who's gonna
I think
remember?
that's supposed to be
Okay,
a
so-
comma.
Ron, are you making note of these?
Right there.
Yes, I am.
All right, then never mind.
Yeah, I don't think you need
And
to.
then
say
actually
that.
Rule 3, that last
was just
paragraph.
formatting.
As long as someone's getting
person
it.
needs a
Okay,
space.
page break on,
Dash.
before Rule 5.
I think we're just doing
He's
spaces.
the recorder. He's nominated himself, so.
You can just put as recorded, and I'll make all the edits.
So will you, Ron, put this on the, so we can...
I'll email it all back.
Okay.
And what did you want me to do with 5, Jessica? You want me to push?
I just wanted, there's
break.
there's a page break function. If you just do page break before Rule 5, then it'll go to the top of the page. I just have,
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
have a
See
thing
it at
about
the
floating
top.
headers.
Oh, yeah, see, yours is clean though, I don't know how, you probably did it afterwards. So it's
you
just,
know what it is? I bet it's a Mac, and it
Mac to
doesn't,
PC thing.
oh, yeah,
yeah.
it just needs another
That's
line.
fine.
What I'll do is I'll reformat it in Word and leave it in Word. So the
Yeah.
export probably missed that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so we're good with this for now. Okay. Our next item, the green development standards.
We had some homework, I think, right?
Yeah.
10?
8, 9, 10. Okay, we'll start.
First, we're gonna take this information and do what with it today?
You're gonna
Do you
go,
want the stuff we like, the stuff we don't like?
yes. What basically I'm gonna do is I'm gonna record all this so we can get it to Chris Curtis. So we need to go through these sections, we can read it and have comments and say, I don't like this, I wanna add this. That could be one way to do it and just, it's
I
a bit
think-
tedious, but it's a.
Okay.
Why don't we go make a run through if there are things that people don't want that we can cross off and just get rid of, might be a way to start if there are anything.
Well, one thing that I noticed just in the first section though is that a lot of this is, there's a lot of very specific, like, narrow concepts, and then there's also like huge things like orienting your building. So I mean, I don't know how, in our point-based system, I don't know if we're going to be differentiating points for different things. I mean, some of these are things that will have no impact on many or some applicants. You know, I mean, if you have no trees on your lot, do you get credit for not knocking down trees, you know, or if you have one tree that's in the back corner. So I don't know how that's going to work logistically. As I'm reading through it, I don't know how we're going to apply them.
Okay, Harry, you can...
Harry?
All right, getting back to can we talk about the point system for a second?
Sure.
All right, let's go right back to the same old, same old. How are we going to make sure that whoever is getting points is achieving that point level? Who is going to be the one to going down and check all this off from 1 through 10 or 20 or whatever it's going to be? How's that going to happen?
Planning board member?
And I don't mean honor, because I've just seen so many instances where things are supposed to be done just aren't being done.
I would say it would be sort of like any other permitting process to some extent. It's another level of review that you would need to do for specific plans, and you'll need to figure out what are those things that are coming before you for review. So if it's being applied to, I don't know, if we decided you're going to do multifamily residential and commercial and industrial, you are going to need to review this like you would review a special permit, and you have all the criteria in a special permit. You would have to go make sure that they're hitting all the special permit stuff and they're hitting all of this stuff as well, if they want to go through this program.
And then it's going to revert back to what's at the bottom of our agenda that's been there all year, is the item permit conditions and follow-up. It's
It's the same, that's what I'm trying to
It's going to
say.
fall under that whole thing where who's going to
Who's going to do
really
what?
release it.
So that, what you're saying, Jessica, because we always have issues with contractors or whatever do things, and it's by plan, and all of a sudden someone will come up and say, did you know that this isn't conforming with the plan? And we're thinking that the building inspector is checking up on these things. Now what you are saying, I think, that once we approve these things, it'll be up to us.
No, I misunderstood the
police that?
question. I didn't understand the question. So you're going to go through your process and check things off, and then the follow-up will be, I mean, yeah, right now the way it is, it'll be the building inspector. You could ask for somebody to submit a report of all of the things that are going to be, that are being done. You know, we do that with other projects if it's stormwater related, that we require engineering reports to come in, and they have to be reviewed. You know, that's a good question. These are questions that you can put at Chris as our consultant,
well,
and say, these are all fine and good. We don't know who's going to enforce these in the end.
Right.
Tell us what sticks we can hold to ensure that we're going to get things done the way that we want them to be done.
Now, the other thing would be, if a person saying, whether it be a contractor building 10 houses or a person just building one house, now, under the point system, if they meet a criteria, say, of so many points, what is their reward? Say I have, I don't know, how many points do we have? 25?
We haven't done it.
Oh, okay. Well, let's say we have 20 points, and that person says, I don't know if I can meet 20, but I can meet 6 out of those 20. And that person, is that person dedicated to making sure those 6 are made, and it's up to us to see that they're made, or who does that? If they
Like I
make
just
it?
said, right now would be what's the process in place right now. We don't have a zoning enforcement officer that's a standalone position. We have a building inspector who deals with foot traffic all day, hands out building permits, does inspections in the afternoon, and is, you know, on the same schedule as everybody else in the building.
Yeah, we might
I mean,
be-
in all
Okay, so-
fairness, there isn't enough time for him to do everything.
So let's say one of us goes out and takes a look at it and says,
We can't do that, John.
well, no, I'm just saying, we get that certain person, whether it's us or someone else, and that person says, this person has met the 6-point system requirements. What's that person's reward?
It's a voluntary program, and there is
Yeah, the reward is just to have a green area or.
We talked about that.
place.
If they don't make enough, if they don't meet whatever our point threshold is that we determine.
Yeah, I was gonna go the
supposed
opposite.
to, then they don't get anything.
These are good
Yeah,
questions.
they're not
but
getting
they're not on
something,
8,
like
9,
she
10.
said.
Yeah, we're off topic. We got,
Like she said, they don't get anything other than the reward themselves that they finish.
Unless they
till
meet the
6.
threshold. If they meet the threshold, they get the rewards.
What rewards do they
Well,
get?
this is what we talked about last time. We talked about additional square footage. I think we agreed not to do the reduction of parking spaces.
Okay,
increase in
that's
the building
right.
height.
I
We went through a lengthy
was
list.
going off
The ability to do a
myself.
flag lot, the frontage
Yeah.
requirements.
Okay, I was going off, what happens when they don't?
Nothing.
If
They don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they've got the place built, how are you gonna take it away from them?
Take what away?
They
If
just won't
just-
qualify for anything.
Okay, that's all, they just won't qualify for anything.
Well, but you would have already qualified them.
Right,
Any-
so then what happens?
They don't do anything, they don't get anything.
No,
that's all
no,
I'm
no, no,
saying.
but you're
No, but
gonna
what if
give them
they
an
do
incentive.
it?
Well, if they're gonna give them an incentive for a reduced frontage requirement, you give them the reduced frontage, and then they don't do all the things that they said they're gonna do, you already gave them their.
Yeah.
That comes
Right, so what happens to them?
Okay, got it.
You can, other than a slap on the wrist, you can't do
well, wait a
anything.
minute, this hasn't been fully brought to form yet. We could have performance bonds, we could do a variety of things to make this happen. We just have to get through the,
Well, not only that, you can simply say that, this frontage reduction is essentially a special permit here that's conditioned upon the completion of all these tasks. If you don't do it, then you've just built on an illegal lot, and when you do that, your building's subject to being torn down, and you can't.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can just make a conditional approval on them doing these things. I mean, one of the things we talked about, Chet, at the very first meeting this year about the enforcement and the follow-up is that the items that tend to fall through the cracks are the ones that are non-zoning items. When we get into things like the lighting and the shrubbery and things like that, which is what a lot of this stuff is. And for those items, we can simply make them report back. We can make them come back and, or submit an affidavit under the pains and penalties of perjury or whatever we want, whatever the time period is. I mean, for those things that the building inspector isn't going to even know to look for, let alone have the time or the capability.
And honestly, they don't get a certificate of occupancy unless they've met all of the conditions in the plan. So they have a plan, they've done it. The city engineer goes out, makes sure they've done everything that they said they're gonna do for drainage. City planner goes out, brings the plans, sees that they've done everything that they said they're gonna do in terms of planting and stuff. If they haven't done it, they don't get a certificate of occupancy. They can't move in.
So like you just said, and I just counted, there's 4 people that all of a sudden will be checking that before they get their certificate to get in there. You got the planning, you got the building inspector, and so on.
The building inspector does not get a certificate of occupancy.
No, but I mean that person
With the
is
city
there.
engineer, and, I mean, he doesn't, he's,
I don't, it's off subject, but, we could get some third-party agency and require a report from them, and the developer has to pay for it. Just tossing it out there.
yeah, no, I
That's another thing.
think if we're looking at trying to come to a successful completion and passage of an ordinance, I think we've got to be careful how much burden we put on an applicant to make sure that it's reasonable. I mean, yes, everybody needs to do what they say they're going to do, but by the same token, we want people to do some of this stuff.
Right.
So,
You don't want to make it too hard.
Agreed.
so back to page 8.
So, I mean, I guess part of the thing is, take, item C there, to preserve natural topography. I mean, I think that's like a laudable goal for us to be working towards, but I don't know whether we're looking for that to be a one-point item. I mean, first of all, I think it's pretty vague, and a lot of us sort of have that language. I know that David was frustrated with, reasonable and unnecessary land disturbance. I mean,
Extent feasible.
right, I think a lot of that is really vague, but even assuming it's strict and it says, no alteration of natural topography, I don't know that that's, if you make that on a par with reorienting your house 45 degrees so it's facing south, I don't know how we're planning on doing that to try to
You're
make
saying
them
it doesn't seem like it's particularly green, is that?
Well, it's not necessarily not green, but it seems like there's varying, I mean, are we gonna weight the different things, so you give, 1 point for that, but 4 points if you're willing to reorient your building?
That item was my favorite item on the list.
No, that's what I'm saying, is that I think that's a laudable goal, I just don't know how you put that on a par with everything, with some of the bigger items. I mean, I think that that's,
How do you scale it?
right. But
I think we need to do this in pieces and maybe like, if we go through these items and can find any of them that don't belong in here, get rid of those, excise some of these, extent feasibles. Try to clean that up, and then maybe weight these items with points. I mean, maybe somebody gets 2 or 3 points for one thing that's important. I don't know, but I think this is a huge elephant that from the start
I just send it back to PVPC and tell them to scale it and tell them to do it. Just send it right back and say, we'd love it if you could completely redo this, put it in a point system, let us see it. Thank you.
That's okay, but we still have to input what we want. What Easthampton.
I don't disagree with that.
We just can't read it like this because it's not, the language isn't in the format of a point system.
Yeah.
We just can't, we're not going to get anywhere with this because everything is worded inappropriately.
Jessica, if we told them what we've sort of done to restructure this and limit its scope and make it optional for these benefits, I mean, have we done enough where we can reasonably go back to them and ask them to reformat it, or are they just going to start banging their heads against the wall? If we say not single-family homes, I think we limited it to 3 of those benefits and then added the flag lot maybe, and we wanted it in a point system format. Have we done enough to get a passing grade to hand it in as homework?
Well, I think that maybe we don't need to get into the gory details, but it might be worth looking at some of these headers in terms of, are these all goals that you want to try to accomplish under something like this? Do we care about parking and trip reduction? Do we care about landscaping and water reduction? Do we care about protection and buffering of land and agricultural uses? Because the more stuff you leave in there, the more point systems you have. And I'm
Right.
sort of going back to the stuff that I sent you that was from that 21st century zoning thing. And they have ranges on certain things. So they've got, they have an alternative transportation section, and then they have 1, 2, 3, 4 different things under that. So if you did all 4, then you get 4 points.
See,
Some of these things are just there's too much in
That's
each
why I want
of these sections, and so...
the PVPC's opinion on how they would rate them. I mean, I'd like to see an opinion. And I'm not saying I want to form my own, and, the truth is, I look at all these and I think they're all important. What's more important, what's not?
Right.
I need another opinion. I need an expert.
Well, but when you go into parking and trip reduction, you're making reserved spaces for compact cars. You probably won't see an overabundance. I just don't see that should be. It's probably, you're right, Jessica. We could go through this and pick out words or sentences here and there, but the headings are probably what we really should look at and let PVC, Pioneer Valley Planning, sort of interject.
I think this could be greatly edited and reduced.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we got 18 pages, but even if it went to 25 pages, as long as it was, I don't know.
Some of the tree preservation stuff, if I had to hack and slash, that would be where I'd start. Number 9.
Yeah, I think the tree preservation stuff is pretty broad, and
Really? I like to protect trees. I'm a tree hugger.
I still think we'd be better off just suspending this conversation for a few months and waiting to see what happens after the permits are filed and stuff starts coming in for 15 Cottage Street. I think some of this may be spinning our wheels on something that's going to be swept into a bigger project, is my hope.
What do you think, Jess?
I'm happy to defer to what other people want to do. It's a pretty big undertaking, and I don't know.
Well, I don't know if just throwing it back to Pioneer Valley and saying, look, it
Well, in all fairness, I don't
worked
think
this
we've
for
given
us.
enough to go on yet.
Yeah. So
I
you
mean,
don't
I
think?
could say to him, I could say to Chris, the planning board wants this to be a voluntary program. It's not applicable to single-family homes, applicable only to multifamily, commercial, and industrial.
Yeah,
right?
that sounds good.
They,
Well, if it's entirely voluntary though, why don't we want it applicable to single family?
We want it applicable
Okay.
to single-family.
If they elect, I misspoke. I
Oh, that's right,
Okay.
single family.
That was what we're talking about as mandatory, I think we had said
Right,
that.
yeah.
But, I mean, I'm thinking of the flag lot thing, because I think that's the
Oh,
most
right.
valuable part. is
Right.
that If somebody wants to build a single-family home, they can.
okay.
Yeah.
So
that's
we
good.
have these incentives that they are comfortable with, which we've gone through.
1 and 2.
The standards themselves are overly complex. Or,
they're
I mean,
overstated.
the board wants to move to a point system, but they're having trouble determining how they can take the current language and translate that into a point system. There's some discussion that it might need to be greatly edited. We want your technical
Expert opinion.
advice on,
Moving to fewer items under the headers would make it much easier to score.
Well, the other thing I'm thinking is you can say, like Jess was saying on our other thing, is that you have a block for site disturbance, and you can have like 10 things there, and if you can meet 8 of them, so then you can get into the specifics, but you're getting a point if you satisfy
For each
site
one.
disturbance.
Right.
And so like you could do, maybe you do it something
Right.
like that, and then
That's
maybe you can
what
use
I'm
all these
thinking.
little things. But the other thing that I'm still unclear about is, I mean, if you get a point for, not cutting down trees, but there aren't trees on your lot, things like that, like, or if you live on a street where the natural orientation of the street is facing south, like, or you're oriented towards the sun, like, I don't know, do you still get a point there? I mean, I guess you're getting a point no matter what, because you're not.
No, but I thought that there are other ways you can get points if it's that way.
Right, no, I understand that,
You use
but.
another point to compensate for that point. That's why we would like him to go in to say,
I'd say if you bought a lot that had the right orientation, you deserve the point, you picked the right
Well,
lot.
I mean,
well, that way too, but
But Jerry, that's a catch-22, I mean,
well, plus, what if we want to stop them from tweaking it 45 degrees to not face the right way?
right.
If they're a model of green and they happen to buy into it, they're a model of green. If they.
Well, that's what I
I see
mean.
Jesse's point though, I mean, you could get some really wonky looking things just in order to meet, to get points,
Oh, yeah.
to get something.
There's
And it
some
could be-
weird stuff in here that can backfire if it's not thought through.
Right.
Well, I think that your system is excellent by having the header be the point, 1 point, and then having 10 line items
And
underneath.
you need
because-
5 of them or something.
Because if 3 of them are
Right.
wonky, you still have to, I mean, it kind of, that's.
But so then who's gonna
solution.
say, like, you didn't have enough trees on here that were worthy of protecting, so you don't get credit for not knocking them down? Like, that's the weird part, is that, and it's, for something like that, it's case by case. You almost wanna go with Ron's approach and be like, you have you didn't buy a fully wooded lot, so you don't have to clear it, so you didn't have the environmental impact, and you get a point.
Right, or you get a person
I
who
agree.
has a wooded lot and doesn't want to
Actually, they should,
tear them down.
they could get points for planting trees rather
Right.
than taking them down.
Yeah.
So
Right,
it could be an
yeah,
alternative
and you should
of-
get points for
You didn't have
keeping
any
what's
trees,
there.
you bought into a subdivision where all of these
Had already been
trees had
cleared.
already been
Yeah.
clear cut. You
So
now are replanting
Give them some
30%
points
of your
for
lot
planting.
to shade your house to make sure it's cool. I mean, there's other.
There's also some goofy stuff. There's one of the options is that you're not going to plant any trees that are ever going to shade the south face of any.
Of a next door
any other
neighbor.
property.
Yeah,
And the next door neighbor, that's a little weird.
That's a tough.
That's pretty standard.
That one I wouldn't even put in.
Right. Well, and like some of the stuff with like ride shares or sidewalk access and bike path access, like that's not applicable.
Yeah, to
Certainly
a-
not applicable to a single family home, but
No.
it's, I mean, access to the bike path is a limited stretch of properties, so like you can't say I don't know, maybe you do say you don't get a point because you're, out on Route 10 and you're nowhere near the bike path, so you can't get that point, but you can get something else.
Yeah,
This
but
evaluation
for a
process is
person,
looking more and
Jess,
more
for a
complicated.
person who's not
It's too much
near the
for you.
bike path, there's like 15 other points or whatever points they can
Right.
get because they're not near there.
If
Maybe
you-
they get an extra
If you make
points
it-
for something
If
else.
you make it too complicated, nobody's
No one will
going
do
to.
it.
That's
yeah.
right.
Nobody is
Just
going
gonna
to
be
use
another
it.
25 pages in the ordinance.
That's in the
that
ordinance that sits there
yeah.
that nobody uses because
Right.
it's too complicated to administer
Yeah,
and
well,
enforce.
simplify it.
Well, so should we send this back to PVPC and see what they do? And if that gets us somewhere where it's manageable, then it does, and if not, then we can put it off while we see if some of these other things.
Yeah, because I can
In terms
see,
of the zoning review and the hopeful zoning overhaul, if we come up with something we're comfortable with, we can
Yeah.
include that in the
Right.
RFP
Yeah.
and say, you know, we've got these standards we'd like to see incorporated. So, you know, if it, you know, I don't think we should.
I think if he can come back from Pioneer Valley with
8
something
pages.
that's simplified, that we can say to ourselves, we can work with this and either cut, add, or do something, and then go from there. But the way it is now, and we can go on for maybe 100 meetings.
Well, this
let's do
group,
that.
we can go on till we all die.
Well, we're talking
Yeah.
too much vision here and not enough.
Right. I mean, it's nice to have vision, but it's,
Okay, so are we all agreed that we should send this back? to
I agree that we
PVPC?
should send
And then we
this
can
back.
decide if
Do you
we
think there's enough to be reasonable with them, or do you want?
And I can just say, there's no rush, take your time.
Yeah.
right. So
So if
if
you,
you put
and
that,
if you come up with something, you really don't have to come back to the meeting and present it, just send it to
Right.
Jess.
right.
Just say we want something simpler, much simpler,
Yeah.
incentive-based, voluntary program, with these incentives in place, point system.
Boom.
Right.
See what you can give us and
Yeah.
try to decomplicate
Yeah.
it.
Do we need to vote on that to send it back to them?
What's that?
Do we need to vote on it to send it back to them?
You're the board.
I don't,
What do you think?
I think.
Well, we're all in agreement, it seems
Okay,
that
let's
we
just
want
do a vote. All
to...
right,
Consensus, so let's just do it by consensus, it's like everybody's in agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, but why don't you go ahead and make the motion anyway, so that would be
All right,
clear.
I move that we send back the draft green standard, green development performance standards, as we've just discussed.
I second it.
Good.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstentions?
You know, I read this thing, there's a lot of stuff in here I look at. I mean, I'm not a builder, but I look at this and I figure, well, why aren't they doing that anyway?
Well, and I think that's the thing, is when it's like, well, they probably are, and then you're gonna get points
Yeah,
for it. I don't know.
they're doing it.
There's,
Don't go anywhere.
Once they get rewarded,
Is there anything in this
Yes.
they get rewarded for something they're doing automatically.
Come on.
Make me do it earlier, then we won't hate
I just want to
you.
apologize for it.
Okay, so this is
So long,
just,
I can
this is for the next agenda, so you just, I'm giving you hard copies, so you don't have to print it out yourself. This is a letter from the city engineer in regards to Kingsbury Way, which we had talked about.
Yeah.
And so, this is his letter, and they're now looking for, reducing the covenants, and then the request, the recommendations to get a bond of $30,000 to cover the remaining work. So you can just look at this and put it on the agenda for the next meeting on.
Okay. The other administrative thing I want to talk about is putting the proposal to the residential
Oh, yeah, the bakeries.
bakery. If people are in agreement, I'm going to put it on next meeting's agenda, and I will work with Jess and get some more information before the next meeting, so that you can we can start discussing it.
That'd be great.
That'd be good.
Sorry, that was regarding the bakery?
The residential home bakers.
homes, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
The home baker, yeah.
occupation thing.
I actually would like to get an official opinion from the health agent to provide you as well, because
Yeah, that would be
she
good.
feels kind of strongly about not allowing them, which
Oh,
is
really?
interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'll see if I can get her to draft up a memo to you on her opinion regarding the residential.
That'd be fabulous.
Yeah, because she was talking about maybe
And then,
extending it to Biggies, and that's,
There is there's actually a state law that governs them, that the health code already has a health code in place.
There's a health-
Regulations.
They're only allowed to sell out of their home. I asked her, because this was my follow-up question to her, because
Right.
there was some discussion, wouldn't it be great if she could,
Mhm.
you know, bake something and then sell it somewhere else. The health
can
codes
only
don't
sell-
allow that.
Right.
That's considered some other kitchen, can't remember, commercial kitchen.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the home kitchens can only sell out of their house or at a farmer's market. And so they wouldn't be able to be selling at other places, which was not what I got out of that conversation.
Right.
So, anyway.
Okay, so,
So
and then
we'll
I
discuss
just,
that. This is in January though, right?
Yes.
January 8th is our next meeting. David Gardner is not here tonight because he's sick. He won't be with us next term. His appointment runs out the end of this year. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank him for his service this year.
He's a good man.
And wish everybody a happy holiday. And
I move that we adjourn.
I second that motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Jessica.
Have a happy holiday.
We're gonna hit that button. Please.